In this video, we interview Reverend Mike Ward, leader, Stewardship for All Seasons. Mike is the author of Abundance, Creating a Culture of Generosity, Fortress Press 2020. For several years, the South Carolina Synod has partnered with congregations. This is an opportunity to hear about Stewardship for All Seasons and consider thinking about stewardship development in your congregation. Welcome, Mike. Could you tell us a little bit about Stewardship for All Seasons?
Absolutely. We created Stewardship for All Seasons to apply what we've learned over the decades working with nonprofit agencies, and we've applied that to the church, where the stewardship work begins with articulating a case for gifts, and then informing, inspiring, asking, and thanking people. We think that what we've put together moves far away from a financial transaction and far more into inviting people into the ministry. The emphasis is on biblical and theological grounding that works. We don't talk much about tithing because so few American Protestants actually do tithe. And the gap between the percentage that people do give away and a tithe is just so big that so many can't get there. And so we focus more on Jesus's words of Matthew 6:21, where he talks about where your treasure is, your heart will be also, making stewardship more about aligning your heart more with the ministry. We focus on abundance thinking, like stories of the feeding of the 5,000, where they originally thought there wasn't enough, but it turned out that there wasn't only enough. It wasn't just sufficient, but there was leftover. We focus on theological grounding, like the first article of the Apostles' Creed, that God created everything that exists is a gift from God, and simply we're able to share back a portion of what God has first provided us. So again, as we do that, we move away from looking at stewardship as a financial transaction and look at it far more as an opportunity to make an impact for ministry as a spiritual practice. And ultimately what Stewardship for All Seasons helps a congregation to do is to articulate the story of the impact of their ministry. It's so much of stewardship is about storytelling and relating the impact of our ministry, the impact of what God's doing in our lives, to people, so that and that's the basis of where stewardship will flow.
What would you say are some of the benefits of a congregation participating in Stewardship for All Seasons?
Well, certainly the number one benefit, and what most congregations are looking for, is that increased revenue. And we certainly experience that. We see the average congregation growing somewhere between 10 and 15% in overall revenue in the first year in Stewardship for All Seasons, and many even grow more than that. And we have congregations now that have been in the program for 6-7 years, and they've doubled their revenue to the annual fund in that period of time. So certainly that's what most people are looking for, and that's what happens. But even beyond that, it's a better understanding of why it is we raise money. That it's not just to pay the bills, but it's to allow us to do more ministry. It's not just about survival, but it's about leading the congregation into what's next, into what God's calling us to do. And it gives us a story to tell. If all we ever do with stewardship is publish what I call the box score, the revenue versus expenses, we aren't giving people a story to tell. But it's when we talk about the impact of the ministry and what difference that's making in people's lives that we have a story to tell to our friends, to our neighbors, to the people that we come across as to that we are part of a ministry that has a story worth sharing. And there's plenty more benefits than just that, but those are the primary things that I think people are looking for, and the primary things in which we feel every congregation involved in this program will experience.
What would you say is a timetable for congregations who would want to participate?
So our preference in the program is to start this and launch in May. What we like about that timetable is it gives us an opportunity to kind of ground what's coming up But then we're able to take the whole summer to do what we call creating the case for gifts, which is simply, if you had more money, what would you do with it? How much more money do you need next year, and why do you need that? And so we begin to articulate the case for what gifts will be used for. And if we have the whole summer, then it's a nice relaxed pace to get that work done. And then as we gather again in late August and September, we can really then start to put together the stewardship drive and to make that stewardship drive not just something that happens, but that it's a real value and benefit to the congregation as far as articulating our story, as far as inviting people deeper into the mission of the congregation and where it is we're going. So we do that through the fall. We focus then on year-end gifts, certainly end of November and into December. And then as we launch into the new year, we invite people into a different track to take a deep dive into one of the supporting roles for stewardship. When we talk about Stewardship for All Seasons or a year-round stewardship program, we're not talking about asking for money all the time. Well, but that year-round is the building blocks that we need to have a strong stewardship program year-round. And certainly, so we have different tracks, and certainly the most important of those is communications, where we're telling the story, that the story that we are telling is the story that we want to be told, that invites people into deeper relationship with the ministry and an understanding of the impact that we're having. But we have 6 different tracks for people to choose from, including plan giving, communications, special appeals, council leadership, and volunteer development. And people choose one of those tracks for then the January through May period of time to take that deep dive so that they begin to change culture in that area and not just hear about something that they ought to be doing.
How many leaders, or who would be the leaders in a congregation that you would identify to help a congregation navigate through this process?
Well, we definitely believe that the rostered leader needs to be involved in Stewardship for All Seasons, at least in the first couple of years. Once in this program for a period of time, then lay people can certainly take it and run with it. But in the early years, we need the rostered leader involved, and certainly they can work themselves out of a job with this. And then as we gather, I think we'll talk about in a minute, we gather in cohorts. And for that cohort meeting, we need at least one lay person, if not a couple of lay people, to join our cohort meetings to kind of learn what's going on, to take back then to the congregation for this. Now, I mentioned the track system that we're inviting people into. And so sometimes the tracks involve people who aren't necessarily on the stewardship team. You know, if you enter a plan giving track, you might need people on your endowment team involved in that. If you're doing the council leadership track, certainly your council members are involved in that. With volunteer development, you may have different team leads involved in that piece of it. If you do strategic planning as your track, certainly your long range planning committee and other leaders would be part of that. So for the stewardship program piece of this itself, it's the stewardship team and leaders from that. And then the focus area for that track really depends on which one you pick on as to which leaders are going to need to be involved in that.
Could you tell us about how congregations cluster and form cohorts to facilitate learning and make the process more affordable?
Sure. So we've certainly done that in South Carolina, where we pull a group of congregations together to learn alongside one another and to learn from one another. I can do this one-on-one, but it certainly gets more expensive if I'm just having to do everybody in a one-on-one relationship. So we pull together cohorts of anywhere between 3 and 8 congregations together to come together and do that joint learning that all of us need to hear, but a small enough group that I can get to know each congregation, and what's going on within it to help to personalize the program to what they need to get out of it. So the cohort time is for the sharing of information that everybody needs. But then there's also then one-on-one time between me and the congregational leadership, discerning, how do we nuance this approach in your context? Because everybody's different. But the cohort model allows us to share together. Oftentimes, some of the best learning comes as one congregation shares what they tried out and it worked, and so somebody else will then pick that up and implement that themselves too. So it's kind of what it is to be a synod, walking together and being better, stronger and better together as we do things, alongside each other. And in the midst of all that, we can save the congregation resources as we launch this program.
Thank you, Mike. We want you to know we appreciate your continuing work with congregations in the South Carolina Synod. Because of the partnership with the South Carolina Synod, the cost is reduced for the first-year congregations and returning congregations. A congregation entering the first year can expect 50% of the cost to be paid by the Synod. Congregations are asked to contribute back to the Synod through mission support. Working with other congregations not only makes it more affordable, but brings an energy to the process. A covenant between the Synod and the congregation is available online. Use the contact information on the screen to get in touch with me.